All right, we are recording. My name is Thomas Brush, guys. Most of you know that, but I make indie games for a living, and so does my buddy Bobby. Bobby, how you doing, man? You want to give us a quick intro of who you are, what you do?
Hey there, Thomas. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I'm Bobby. I'm a full-time indie game developer, the sole developer of Miror Forge. I'm coming from Europe. I'm 30 years old, and I also work as a 3D artist, freelance artist, digital marketeer, which are basically skills that helped me to get here to being a full-time indie game developer.
Awesome. That is definitely true for me as well in terms of like marketing. Like if I hadn't, I was in marketing probably for 3 years before I did, my own studio. And if I hadn't done that, I think it would have been really hard to do what I'm doing now because half of what I do is just marketing, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but
Yeah, definitely, I agree because as far as I've seen from my experiences, besides game development, any other product you have in the world nowadays, you essentially require marketing. So in
yeah.
order to be seen by your customers and so on. And the same like you, I also was like 3 years in companies doing digital marketing, SEO, content writing, email marketing, and so on. And currently now I'm like 50% of the time doing the development of the game, and the other 50% I'm doing the marketing.
Yep, man, that's the way it goes. And guys, we're gonna talk all about that. This is gonna be a really fun conversation. I told Bobby before we started this podcast, I was like, we're not gonna have a problem having a conversation because he and I seem to connect, and we probably also share a lot of similarities. So we're just gonna chat and we're gonna talk about how he became a full time game developer. That's what you guys want to know. Most of you, I think, want to know how the heck do you make a full time living making indie games from your bedroom. And so we're going to talk about that in this podcast. Bobby, I'm going to run a quick intro really quickly, and then I'll see you on the other side, okay?
Sure thing.
By the way, guys, feel free to download my free 2D game kit below. It's totally free. It's my treat to you. I used this exact 2D game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and then I got to play it in front of his subscribers, which was really awesome. So download that. Use it however you want. It's my treat to you. Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at your game. Tell us a little bit about this game. It's freaking gorgeous. I'm honestly pretty jealous because I'm making a first person shooter and it doesn't look like this. So tell me a little bit about your studio and your game.
Thank you, man. I mean, don't be jealous. You don't get these eye bags like I have, like from working like on the smaller games. So when I started working on Mirror Forge, I'm like working 18 to 20 hours. Even my friends started calling me workaholic, basically. But
Yep.
hey, this is what I love to do, man. So, so yeah, Mirror Forge is a first-person psychological, in a way, survival horror game. On the Steam page, it says that it's Silent Hill and Stranger Things inspired, but mainly that's the aesthetic. The story is completely different. So when I started this game, this is my second like commercial game. So when I started this game, I took a little bit different approach than the first game. So the first thing I did when I thought about this game was the marketing. So what do I mean by that? I started doing research whether there are similar games, whether that is required on the market. Did several surveys with players in over 100 Facebook groups. I asked them what would you like to see in a horror game. Did some research on some unique content for the storyline because I would love to be called storyteller, not like developer or artist. I
Yeah,
love to
I feel
tell
the same way.
stories. Yeah, and when I was doing the research for the horror of the game, I took a look like at the other games and movies and books, and mainly nowadays I've noticed that a lot of horror games and movies and books have like either religious themes or they have like from Egypt or with Greek gods, and I wanted to have something completely different, like something I might say realistic and Lovecraftian in a way, because Lovecraft has this fear of the unknown and stuff.
Yeah.
So I found on Google the Mesopotamian myths from the Sumerian civilization. I had no idea what that was, and I did some digging, and it turns out that it's the first civilization that ever popped up, like in history. And they had these gods, these myths, the Anunnaki they're called, and these were like basically these are like conspiracy theories, but I found them interesting for my game. Like these are like they're also in the myths, but they consider maybe aliens or something. So I said, yeah, this could be cool for my game. So that's how I started Mirror Forge, basically doing research, doing marketing research, check for the SEO. For example, Mirror Forge was chosen by the community. I had no name for my game, and I did like some research on Google, checked whether these names are available, and if I write them on Google, will they pop up on the first page? So Mirror Forge was one of those names that was popping up
Yeah.
first. I mean, there were no other results, so I knew that if I use this name, it would be great, and the community chose exactly that, and that's how I started like Mirror Forge.
That is such a bizarre and genius way to come up with a game. You
Thank
know,
you.
it's like,
I guess.
I mean, you're a marketer. I mean, you told me that you're into marketing at the beginning of this call, and that's a marketing tactic, which is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here. What you're saying is the community decided what the game was going to be, and they decided what the name was going to be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's just brilliant. It's so smart, and the reason it's smart is because that audience is going to feel like it's their game, and they're going to buy it, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, they're engaging with the game. Even at the moment, I think, I mean, it's not a secret, but for the full game, I have like these moments frozen in time, and these are like figures of light of various people. So when something exploded, I don't want to spoil too much. When something exploded, they got caught in space and time. And I asked every single streamer to do a single line to voice act like every single
Yep.
frozen moment in the game. And these will be Steam achievements. So they're like, currently, so far, there are like 30 streamers who voice acted, besides the main actors, of course.
Hey, what's the biggest streamer you got?
So there was CGU. He's doing horror
How
games.
many subs?
Oh, I haven't checked honestly. I haven't checked.
Surely you
Sorry.
know. Like that's like your claim to fame. You get to say like, this guy has 20 million subscribers. He played my game.
Yeah, usually when I reach out to influencers, to streamers, I just do an Excel sheet or a Google Docs sheet.
Yeah.
And even for my first game, I reached out like to 400 and something content creators and streamers. And I was focusing on content creators who are playing games quite similar to mine, not just horror, basically first-person horror, who love like maybe walking simulators in a way, maybe Outlast style horrors, so not shooters. So yeah, I did the research. I found those email addresses, basically searching them on social media, searching on their YouTube channel, checking like everywhere for their personal email address. And to every single one of them, I sent like an email introducing myself, telling a bit about the game, and of course, a clickbait title.
Man, that's brilliant. You're doing everything right. It's I get a big grin on my face when indie game developers are basically, they're operating like a publisher, because publishers are doing all this grunt work. Like they should be doing all this grunt work. When you said 300 email addresses, I was like, this guy knows what he's doing, because most indie game developers will be like, well, I sent 20 emails, and it's like, well, you're maybe 1% will respond. So if you want 1%, you need to send 300 emails, right? I mean, what
Yeah.
was your response rate? Do you have any idea of like, not necessarily the response rate, but like you said 30, was it 30 streamers?
There were 400 streamers. This 400 streamers sent. I sent emails to
But how many
400
responded and
streamers.
said yes?
Surprisingly, there were over 50% who responded, and I also sent 200 other emails to personal mails of how do I say it, of portals, of journalists, and so on. And during the Steam Next Festival, where the demo of Mirror Forge was, a month later, maybe 100 portals published Mirror Forge. So that was like a huge success. I didn't even
Dude, you're
expect it.
killing it. Like I'm so happy for you. So I really want to know. I mean, I'm sort of like anxious to know, how did you go full time with this? Is it done? Is it done yet?
Yeah, I'm a full-time game developer at the moment. The game is planned to be released like in September 30th.
Okay.
So now I signed a deal with a publisher, DreadXP, and they're gonna publish the game.
Say that
How
again. Say
they,
that publisher one more time. Who's that?
the publisher is DreadXP.
Dread
So they're
XP. I've never heard of them.
yeah.
Are they a smaller publisher, big publisher that I just haven't heard of?
Actually, they're a sister company of Dread Central in Hollywood. So they're doing like they're publishing horror games, horror
Okay.
movies, horror news, and so on. There's
Sweet.
another game like coming out from them, The Mortuary Assistant. Probably you've heard about it. So there are several games which are coming out, but I think as a publisher, they came out like last year, so
Uh-huh.
they're pretty new, but they know what they're doing. And when I spoke with them about the game and so on, they already know what horror means like in games and how should they promote it. And they have quite a big like audience, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to work with them.
Yeah, I've got them pulled up
Yeah.
on screen right now. I don't know if you
Hmm.
mind, but
Yeah,
sort of
no
want to
problem.
show the audience the publisher. Um,
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of publishers who are focused on a specific genre. The reason why, and you could speak to this most likely better than me, the reason why is because they know they have the contacts who know how to sell these games, right? So it's like,
I agree.
who do I reach out to at Xbox for a Game Pass deal? Who knows the horror market and who knows when they want to sell horror games with Game Pass, right? That's really really important. Now there are publishers out there who do all of it, right? I'm not sure. Maybe you know better than me probably, but I feel like maybe like Tiny Build or Devolver, they kind of just they feel a little random right now. But Dread XP, generally, what I'm looking at is horror, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regarding the publishers, I received like 6 or 7 emails from different publishers, and you need to be very careful. I mean, what I will speak about the publishers now, basically, I've learned from you, Thomas. I'm listening to your videos and so on. I was very careful with the publishers. I did detailed research on every single publisher that contacted me,
Yeah.
and I wanted to find a publisher that really understood my game, really understood my audience. So that's how I ended up with Red XP and not the other publishers. So that was the main reason. Even with beginner game developers who listen to this podcast, they need to be very careful when reaching out to publisher. Publisher is a great opportunity. It can provide you funding. It can help you like to find other members who will help you with development and so on. But be very careful whether that publisher sees you as another item in their collection, or they see this game like, yeah, this is the next thing that we need. So that was the main reason why I chose Dread XP basically.
Okay, so clarify there. Okay, I'm trying to. I think I know what you're saying, but I want to make sure my audience fully understands this. What does it mean to be another item on a publisher's list? Why is that a bad thing? And what should it be alternatively?
So when I was doing the research for the publishers, I found out several publishers who have different games in different genres, and they were like, when I asked around, like on forums with other game developers, I realized that several of these publishers were just asking for games to come in their collection, and I felt like they will not focus enough of their time on my game. So my game gets what it deserves and reach out the right audience. And that's why I needed to find a publisher who understands, like in my case, the horror genre, the horror audience. So I looked for something very specific, and that's how I ended up with Dread XP. The moment they reached out to me, I checked their portfolio. I saw that they have like horror games, they have horror audiences, they had a lot of followers, and the people who are commenting, again, be careful with the followers on social media,
Mm-hmm.
because some of these followers might be fake. So you're gonna have to check the comments, see whether they are engaging with the publisher. So that's how I ended up with Dread XP basically. I was looking for a publisher that will publish a horror game and knows the audience and what that audience likes.
Okay, let me get your advice here. Um, so how does how does my audience know? How do I know when I'm just another item on a publisher's list? Okay, so just for clarity, if my audience doesn't understand what that means, it means that a publisher is publishing 20 games and they're really looking for that one game that makes them $20 million. And the
Yeah.
moment they get that game and your game is underperforming, they don't really push it. They don't really they'll do sale events, but it's not like they're going to prioritize that game's marketing. That's what I think of when I think of you're just on their list. You're just another item on their list. How do you know that that's not going to happen to you? How do you know that they're going to consider you and actually treat you like a person as opposed to an item on a list?
Well, that will mostly depend, like, from the experience of the other developers that work with them. So I reached out to most of them, talked with them, asked about it, about the experience. Then I analyzed like their comments and replies with the members in their social profiles. I saw how they replied, what these people like, whether they like horror and so on. In my case, so in a way, if the publisher is like uh, one who is ambitious, and when he reaches out to you, he tells you his plan, and you see the agreement. And basically, it's my first time happening to get an agreement from a publisher where I like 100% of it. So I liked everything in that deal, and it was thoroughly covered, like for marketing, for finances, and so on. So uh, you need to check like basically everything before signing up anything with the publisher.
Okay. So that's such good advice, which is reach out to the developers who are working with that publisher. Here's an even better signal that your publisher is going to treat you right. If they tell you to do that, if they say, okay, you don't trust us, reach out to our developers. And I do that when I'm talking to a publisher. I go, reach out to my previous publishers and ask them how I am to work with. And that's a really good signal. If your publisher, well, if they have a good track record, they'll be honest about it and say, we have a good track record. Feel free to ask. And both of the publishers I'm talking to, well, there's several, but a handful, but both of them the handful of them that I'm talking to now have asked that question to me. They're like, do you want to reach out to the other developers? Here's their email addresses. So that's super helpful. Now, I do have a question for you. You said when they sent you an agreement, really quick, I want to clarify for my audience who's curious. The way you go full-time with the publisher is they send you money, all right? So I'm assuming that's what's happening with you. You're making some money from the publisher.
Yeah, I think.
Correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So my question to you is, you said, well, I saw their agreement and it was just great and I didn't even have any questions. I loved the agreement. Can you give us, you don't have to give us the details. I know I would definitely not want to do that to Dread XP, but what's a good deal?
For me, a good deal was before I received the Dread XP, I required some funding so that I know that I will have at least to cover like a year and a half of my development time, so to not do any other job and just focus on game development. And also in the deal, I wanted to have like localization on a dozen most popular languages on Steam, like covering for voice acting, then QA teams also in that deal. What was else? Let me just check. I'm not really
What
sure
about
what
porting?
I can say and what I can't say. So
I know.
yeah,
I generally know what you shouldn't say, so I'll tell you if you're like, whoa, don't say that. It's usually about the numbers specifically, but
yeah,
console, they're going to cover console, covering console. Yeah. And I put covering in quotes here because they're going to recoup that cost.
Yeah.
With your
game definitely.
Sales. Right.
Yeah.
And I know this, so I can speak to it for me personally, and I haven't signed a deal yet, so for any of my games that I'm working on. But I can say what I'm looking for is I'm looking for an 80-20 recoup. Minimum 80-20. And I didn't know about this until recently, but an 80-20 recoup would be something like you get 20% of the revenue regardless of if they've recouped their advance to you, their marketing, any of their fees that they've specified in the contract. You get 20% right out of the gate after you launch your game. That's ideal. I've signed deals in the past where it's 100% recoup. So I'm not making any money for months until they recoup that cost. The second thing to take note is advance payments. So a lot of publishers will do like a salary. They'll pay you monthly. That is great. It's just, it feels like employment. It's literally, for me, it's just this icky feeling of employment. So what I try and negotiate for is either milestone payments, which like small, like 2 or 3 milestones, or money up front. Now, really quick side note for everybody who's curious, do you want the money up front? Like most of you would probably raise your hand and say, yeah, give me the money up front. Careful, because if you don't use up that cash for business expenses by the end of the year, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So by January 1st, you're going to owe 30% of whatever's left over in taxes. So it's good to consider taxes. So those milestone payments are actually really, really helpful. But those are paid out after you sign a contract, before you launch the game. Correct? So my question to you is there anything about working with publishers that you want my audience to be aware of? Not necessarily your publisher, but what are you nervous about with publishers? What kind of keeps you awake at night, or would keep you awake at night if you had signed a bad deal?
Well, like I mentioned previously, there are all sorts of deals, and even when you sign a deal with a publisher, you know that there will be deadlines. So previously, when I worked on previous games, I was like, yeah, I will take some time, maybe take a break. But now you have deadlines, you gotta finish the game. They're paying the money, you gotta finish the game. So that's the hardest part. And sometimes, as we know, especially if you're a solo developer, sometimes bugs may occur, issues, and so on. And you get this stress that you have to get some builds probably by a certain date. So I'm not speaking only about the release date. Basically, a publisher might tell you, like, by the end of next month I want to have a playable build, like from this to this level, and you need to go through like everything, fix everything, have it ready. And sometimes it can be tough. For example, at the moment I'm working like 16 to 18 hours because I have a deadline, and I need to cover a lot of stuff. There are like 4.5 hours of gameplay so far, and I need to cover everything and see whether, for example, the levels are loading, whether there are any issues, and so on. Yeah, that's the hardest part. But on the contrary to what many indie developers think, working with publisher is amazing. So do not be afraid to work with a publisher. Just be careful.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I think the fail-safe is talk to the developers. Talk to the developers that they're currently working with, and you'll know if they're worth it. Man, that's great. So tell us a little bit about your production of this game. So it sounds like you're the only person working on this game.
Yeah, I started working on it alone, and like I mentioned, the only difference was now I looked at it as a product. I didn't see it like this is my passion, this is my baby. I see it as a product. It's not a game that I make for myself. I make for my target audience and what they love, what they like. As opposed to my first game. I think previously, sorry, Thomas, you asked me like how did I become a full-time game developer? So I'm gonna tie that story to this one.
Go for it.
Like 8 years ago, I was a freelance 3D artist, and I got like some clients over the internet, started working and learning 3D. I was working as a digital marketer in a company, and then we got with another developer to work on a game. It was also a horror game. And this game I call my most successful failure. I'll go a little bit into detail why I call it like that. So my most successful failure is because the game was good. It was quite successful. We had a good story. On launch day, we had like $11,000. That's launch day. And throughout the year, it provided enough income for me, like, to cover all my expenses, like 4 years after that. But the thing is, we had different mindsets with the other developer, and that's the main reason. Like, it's a scar in my past, like that. Now I'm like very wary whether should I work with someone or not, and that's why I went solo dev. My idea was, when I started game development, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I wanted to do entrepreneurial stuff. I wanted to work what I love, do game development. I also did, like, when we got like some of the money, I invested in shares just to have a backup plan. And we had a lot of disagreements with the other developer, and the game released only chapter 1. So it provided enough income. It was great, but we never finished the game. And then the studio split, and I went on as a solo dev. But listening to a lot of amazing people, like, I don't know, Robert Kiyosaki, we have Arnold Schwarzenegger, we have Tony Robbins, we have Thomas Brush. Listening to all of you guys, listening to your advices, what you say about entrepreneurship and game development, I said, I'm gonna go full with it. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Say no to the naysayers. Just learn everything. Don't be afraid. You're gonna make it. And that's how I went. Like, I took several marketing courses again, took courses in programming, and that's how I started Miror Forge, basically.
But Bobby, can you tell me really quick what the name of the game was that you only released one episode for?
It was called Alan Sharp.
Can
It's on
say that one
Steam.
more time?
It's called Alan Sharp.
Alan Sharp.
Yeah, yeah. That's the first game I worked. It was under Mistive Studios. I mean, you can see my name
Oh, there it
now on
is. Okay, I found it on
MystiveDev.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Can I show it?
Um. Sure. Sure. I mean,
I love
I
how
mean,
you
I'm
were
trying to.
hesitant. Like maybe not.
Yeah. The reason for this game, what's the main reason why I don't want to show this game? I worked on this game for 6 years, and I worked hard but not smart, and that's the main problem. Every single thing you see in the game, like every model, every texture, everything, I did by myself. I was like, nope, I'm gonna stay away from marketplace. I'm gonna stay from bought assets. I'm just gonna do everything myself, and that was my biggest mistake. I mean, it covered me like I mentioned for 3 to 4 years, but I spent 6 years before like working every day on that game, and that's not something you want to do. I mean, if you're
No.
looking at it as a business.
Correct. Very, very, very true. I mean, I'm looking at this now. It looks great. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good game, but it looks great.
Yeah,
I'm pretty impressed, man. Pretty cool.
thank you, man.
Yeah. So yeah, you just decided to work smarter. Now the question is, what does that mean? What is working smarter?
For me, working smarter was to change your mindset. That's what helped me the most. Like like an entrepreneur. Plan your time management, money management. If you don't have the time to do some stuff, you can always hire some freelancer, some other people who can help you with the project. Um you can do not be afraid to use bought assets, but always be careful, like whether they fit in your aesthetics of the game. You might do some tweaks in the textures or maybe the models and so on, but don't do everything by yourself. That's very hard, and it's honestly for me it wasn't worth it.
Okay. What are you using for management? Are you using any software for managing your project?
I'm using Trello at the moment
What
because
What is
since
that? Say that again.
that's Trello.
Trello. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Trello is great. It's kind of ugly though. It's not like the prettiest UI, I think personally.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, I think it's called ClickUp. ClickUp is it's kind of like Monday.com. It looks a lot like Monday. But dude, you're totally right. You're totally right about project management and money management. I'm reading a book right now called Profit First, and the first chapter just sort of outlines the story from the author. He had a multi-million dollar, he sold multi-million dollar businesses. He built them and then would sell them. And basically he calls, this is so true with game dev, he calls his business a Frankenstein. Basically, it's a monster that you're creating, and it's really exciting at first, and you're just impressed. You're like, wow, it's alive. Like, this is crazy. It's
Yeah.
alive. But then suddenly you realize it's a monster. It's a monster, and it's eating up my cash. That's that's what I've noticed lately. Is like cash just gets eaten up so fast when you're, especially when you're like at the tail end of production and you're just trying to get stuff done. And so you're totally right. You've got to be careful. You've got to be very, very careful. You've got to have a bird's eye view of all of these team members, of your freelancers, of your budget, of the money you're spending. It's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why I said like I needed some plan B just in case. So like when we got like all the funding from the first game, and I wasn't much of a person going out and spending too much money like previously, and so I tried to pile up some cash to become a full-time game developer. So instead of like buying some expensive stuff, I don't know. There were some people, for example, when they get their money and they're gonna buy a Jeep or I don't know a motorcycle. I decided like I'm gonna ask several people about investing in shares and so on, so like for a yearly dividend. So I'm gonna do that just to have a backup plan, to have the monthly income, so I can continue working game development and doing what I
Yep.
love.
Yep. Well, that is some wise advice. So the next question is, I love asking this question. This is the last question for the podcast. I want to know how it feels. How does it feel to be a full-time game developer? Is this a dream come true? Were you planning on this? Are you stressed? Are you happy? Do you feel free? Do you feel imprisoned? How's it feel?
It's definitely a dream come true because 5 years ago, I'm gonna be completely honest. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
5 years ago, or maybe four, not really sure. When I listened to your podcast and your videos, Thomas, I said like, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy knows how to do games, knows how to do game business, and I'm gonna listen. And hopefully, I will become a full-time game dev one day. And since last year, when I became a game dev, and there was this day when I wake up, I'm not at work, I need to start like doing something creative, something that I love that fulfills me. And luckily, even my girlfriend and my friends, they all support me like with this dream. I mean, it's basically a dream come true. I can't say anything else. Yeah, it can be stressful. I'm working more than before. Before I worked like 8 hours, now I'm working like 16 hours. But I'm doing what I love, and I never feel tired when I finish like game development for the day.
Yeah. I feel the same way. It's so funny. I think I was talking to my brother, and I said, I would rather go down on a sinking ship as the captain than go down on a sinking than be successful and get to my destination with another captain. I feel oddly enough, I feel more at peace on my own boat and going in my own destination, even if it's going to crash and burn. I don't know, and I think that's just an innate entrepreneurial, like it's in my DNA. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah, it totally is. It's guys, let us know in the comments below if you feel that way. Would you rather? It's a fun little would you rather. Would you rather be your own boss and crash and burn, or would you rather work with a successful boss? I think that's a really good question. To wrap up the podcast for sure. Bobby, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to leave with the audience?
I think we've covered everything. I will just say like one more quote for everyone who starts in the game development. I think I've heard this quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was, everything's impossible until someone does it. But in fact, it was said by Bruce Wayne, the Batman. But it's true. Everything's impossible until someone does it. So do not be afraid to take those steps and always learn.
Yeah, and even better, it's clearly not impossible because people like you and me are doing it. And I was telling you before we started recording the podcast, and I like to be honest with my audience, a lot of times, guys, I feel like a fraud, and I feel like I'm leading people astray. Sometimes I wonder how, like Tony Robbins, and I'm not comparing myself to Tony Robbins, but sometimes I wonder how does he struggle with like, yeah, like I'm inspiring like all these people, but only 10% will succeed. And I feel guilty a lot. Like I'm like, man, I don't want to inspire people because like game dev's not for everybody. It's really hard. And a lot of people will go down on that sinking ship. They will go down. And I know that, but it's so fun hearing your story because it doesn't feel impossible. And it reminds me that it's totally possible. Like a lot of my subscribers are full-time game developers. So it's just it's just encouraging to talk to you, Bobby. So yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up the podcast. What do you think?
Sure thing. Thank you for your time, Thomas. Thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, Bobby, no problem. Guys, be sure to click the links below to check out Bobby's game. Bobby, do you have a YouTube channel you want me to share too, or?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, though I do not post much. Most of my devlogs currently go on Red XP's YouTube channel. So
Okay. Well, there's links below, guys. Bobby, give me those links after this call.
Sure.
There's links below to support Bobby, and be sure to subscribe, guys. Leave a like. Download that free 2D game kit below, and Bobby, dude, it's fun chatting, man.
Thank you again. Have a great time.
All right.